this term which you kind of talked about is innovation OS.
Yeah, innovation operating system. Yeah.
So how does that live?
So innovation OS is basically a concept where we create when you were a software engineer or as a programmer, which I was, my lens was pretty simple: technology.
You win, you lose, that's a game. But actually, the whole point of being a player coach is be with the player, for the player, and the player for you.
Success of the player coach is the expiry date of the player coach role in that organization. An external expert like me walks into the organization.
You being who you are, a player coach, where do you tell them to start? And more importantly, what do you tell them to avoid?
The first thing that I would do is obviously congratulate this CXO for
A very warm welcome, Pinaki. Thank you for coming down to our studios here. And for me, I think when I was told about player coach and was told about innovation, I think a lot of thoughts that came into the fact that innovation and inventions, right, are two different things. But then when I speak to a lot of people, they kind of take that piece in the same bucket. And how do we take this? How do we bring clarity? That's where I read your articles, and it was so interesting that I thought maybe let me reach out to you, and it's an privilege to have you at our show, right? To understand your thoughts in terms of innovation, because in the market, as we all know, right, invention, innovation, R&D, it all goes in the same hand, same bucket. But the model which you have, the player coach piece, would love to understand that and the facts of industry. So welcome to our show.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a lovely setup you have here. It's very relaxed, comfortable, not one of those very like a pressure cooker type of setup, etc. So it feels pretty nice. Innovation, right? I think innovation as a subject, I think, is little less understood than we talk about it, right? So if you look at it, we use the word innovation in almost anything.
Right? Almost, yes.
Almost anything. And forget about corporates, forget about organization, etc., business, etc. In our day-to-day life, right? Even when you're speaking with someone in your community, right? You are talking about government affairs, etc. Right? Across the board, we use the word innovation too often, and I wonder how much of it we really understand, right? Often we talk about innovation, R&D, invention, all in the same breath, right? Put everything in the same bracket, but everything has their own places, right? And not just that, innovation and transformation is also another phrase that we use like quite often, right? So again, these two are different things. Maybe one leads to another, but when you were talking about innovation and transformation, innovation and R&D, innovation and invention, etc. Sure, there are connects. Sure, one thing, if you want to connect, there are ways to connect, right? But innovation as a subject is still not sort of, I think, understood separately just because of the value, just from the perspective of the values that innovation alone can offer to the businesses, right? Which is enormous, by the way, right? And this is also another thing, right? So I talked about innovation, R&D, invention, transformation, etc. But let's not forget that we are probably the best Jugaad nation out there.
Oh, yes. Right? I think
best Jugaad nation in the world, and I think all of us should feel proud about that. It's nothing wrong to be Jugaad. I'm told it's so much We are so good at it that even some of Harvard courses are being taught on Jugaad, right? I don't know. I haven't checked if they really do, but there is this, the urban legend is out there, right? So yeah, so we are a Jugaad nation, right? So what really is Jugaad? What is your view?
So that's interesting. I think when we say Jugaad, for me, it's n number of things I could do in n number of ways. Right? That's what if there's something to be achieved, right? When we talk about achieving something, and it's a small goal or task or something where we want to reach to a destination. So we figure out, right, as human beings, at least especially Indians, ways in which how we could reach to that state.
Correct. So we figure a way of solving that problem, right? But then why you are not calling it an innovation?
Ah,
Why you are calling it Jugaad? Right? And that's a very important thing that we all need to think about, right? So your Jugaad and my Jugaad to solve the same problem, to beat the traffic, for example, to reach here in the studio this afternoon. You did probably some Jugaad, I did some Jugaad, but your Jugaad and my Jugaad are not same necessarily, right? More importantly, you had to invent your Jugaad. I had to invent mine.
yeah. I think that's how it started. That's how the question came to our mind.
So,
Right?
so at the end of the day, it's largely about individual endeavor, right? And if you look at Jugaad, you will see that every time it's starting from the zero. So
It does.
right, every time your Jugaad is not, so to speak, reusable in my environment, in my setup, etc. Right. Go back to COVID time. So many Jugaad that has happened, right? From how the school teachers started delivering lectures. That was a Jugaad. We never had the infrastructure like the rest of the world. But then nothing stopped. We overnight could actually get into that.
Yeah, and we did, and
And we did good.
it did good, very good actually.
We did good,
Yeah.
right? So see, the Jugaad is primarily when, is our ability to sort of fix anything. And I'll be very cautious to use the word fix and not solve. Because if that happens second time, we'll fix the plumbing second time. If it happens third time, we'll fix the plumbing third time. We'll not really solve the problem, right? And we're so happy just to be able to fix things. We're just so proud. And in these days, in the world of instant fame and instant gratitude, we get so many thumbs up and likes for our Jugaad. I think somewhere we forget that there are greater value creations that are possible
Agreed.
if we take the innovation route, right? So while Jugaad is probably the single most reason why India as a nation should be the biggest innovator in the world, but it's just the success of Jugaad that I think kind of limits us. And we're so happy with that success. We start celebrating, and then we miss the big picture somewhere in the journey, right? So it's both equally good as well as limiting, as long as I'm concerned, the way I see things, right? So we don't go for looking at, and if I fix something, I seldom has that concept of thinking, could it be reusable? Could it be broad based? Can the same solution solve even other problems, my shoulder problems, neighboring problems?
Correct.
Right.
Either vertical or horizontal.
Correct. As a vertical, as a horizontal, whichever way you look at it, right? Can I broad base basically
base.
my solution?
Yes.
Correct. Can I bring repeatability in terms of the values that it creates? Correct.
Agreed. I think we are so happy with that one fix, that Jugaad. I think when we look at that as an innovation, I think it's just a fix. We celebrate because
Many innovations to my knowledge and to my, if you ask me, many of the innovation stories that are being published everywhere or across social media and everywhere, are probably just a polished sugar. Okay. And that's where we need to really focus. And that's when I said, that innovation as a subject is probably a little less understood than we think we do.
That's why I think that statement which you made about the FY27 innovation deck is already archived and the CEO knows it.
Well, yes, it's a composite statement, right? But then, that's absolutely real, right? And I have actually sat through many such high impact, high powered rooms, those discussions, going through those kind of innovation plans for the next year, etc. And I see there is a pattern, right? So, for example, and okay, before I, sort of tell you what it is, but let me tell you one incident.
Yes, please.
So it was a couple of years back, pharma company. I was sitting across the table with some of the most powerful, influential individuals, right, in the room. The CTO, the chief digital officer, the commercial head, and corporate strategy guy, right? I mean, you can't, expect any more power to be packed in a small meeting room, right? And what we were discussing, because they had a like a CEO stroke CEO review of their innovation plan coming up next week, right? So they were sort of playing that back to me for my advice, right? What I think, how it is, but things are there, stuff like that, right? So it looks solid. 4 or 5 strategic pillars. There's so many, from point solutions to platforms, etc. Everything kind of stitched around all those pillars. So you have strategic pillars from your customer insights, for example. You have strategic pillar, for example, your internal collaboration and communications, for example, right? So you have all those strategic pillars, and then you have like horizontals as well, like governance and portfolio management, stuff like that, right? All good stuff. Anyway, I mean, you you can't probably think of any better picture than what was being shown on that wall, right? Uh, so that was good, right? But then I started sort of digging it a little bit deeper, right? So I said, what was the last year's plan? What was the last year's plan, right? And then that came up, and I could barely notice the differences between what was achieved and what is the new thing that we're doing. Yes, sure, there is a new AI chatbot here now, or there is another communication platform. But then last year there was a engineering effort that got scrapped because they thought that no, there is they'll do some API based engineering and will handle some part of their processes internally, right? Um, but then that didn't work. So this year's plan shows that they have now decided to go like grounds up. So instead of that, integration ways of achieving things, they'll actually build a platform from scratch.
Royo.
All right, it's their business. They are to decide. But then my question was there, what are your validations? How do you know that, whatever new elements that you've inserted into this year's plan um, are supported by the most important frictions the business must be solving? Are you sure these are the most crucial frictions, the crucial problems you will be solving? Are you there? What is your proof points? Correct. How did you arrive at that? Is it mostly top down? What was achieved last year or could not? Then add a percentage ambition on that. Then add the buzzwords, trends, fads. Look at competitor. What the next brand that you closely watch. You look at that brand and then bring in those elements, and so that you can probably look at how much of what is your operational efficiency last year, or what is your annual sales plan last year, and you can add percentage ambition and create the next year sales plan or operations plan. You can top up, right? Incremental growth is still a growth and quite a healthy growth. Let's be honest about that. But when you were talking about an innovation plan, a strategic innovation plan, This past forward method, I call it past forward method, right? The past forward method really doesn't work. What you need to do is that it should be future back. Because you are talking about innovation, if you are solving today's problem using year-started mindsets, skills, tools, techniques, etc., then there is an expiry date that is already written on the solutions that you're building.
Actually, yes. It actually would mean that what you are doing now
So it has to be
already
future
expired.
back.
It has
It
to be
has,
future back.
it
Correct.
has to be future back, right? Look at far out over the next 2-3 years. Decide where you want to be.
Yeah.
Decide what is your strength, right? How you can, encash on your strength. What do you have, the kind of assets that you already probably are sitting on.
It's like the horizon where you look at it, and if I have to reach that horizon where we do not know where that ends,
Correct.
but
But you
that's where you
have some idea practically this is where I want to be, and that will be a superlative area, a superior sort of zone than today, right? So, to me, a strategic innovation plan has to be future back and not past forward. So, if you are doing past forward away of your strategic plan, then what I wrote,
yes, that's what it is. That's what it says. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. That's really what when people look at strategic plans. I think interesting insight which you said here. Uh, Without looking at the future back, we already are working on an expiry date, just awaiting that particular end date to come. And it's an end game basically.
you may have all sort of celebrations just because you completed that project, or you could implement and roll that out. But how long? For how long? Before you want to go back to the drawing board.
So it's the same Jugaad with a fix approach.
Maybe a longer Jugaad.
A longer Jugaad. Wow. I think interesting. So Pinaki, I think one thing I've noticed that you've been always talking about yourself as a player coach, storyteller, AI enthusiast, like kind of all at once there. But if I ask you to pick just one that defines what you do every single day, which one would you pick and why?
Player coach, undoubtedly.
Okay,
That's my operating system.
right. Could you kind of put across what a player coach is?
Sure. So there are two part of it, right? By the way, player coach is something that came from the sports fraternity, etc. Right? So that's where a player and coach could potentially be one individual, not in all sports, but certainly in some sports, right? Yeah. So as a player, so what I do is that so I don't advise from the sidelines, right? Because this is something that organizations do not do every day, right? Or this is not a run of the mill kind of task for most organizations, right? So there is a lot of learning curve that are usually involved if the organization wants to do that on their own, right? And even after the learning curve, there is always a fair amount of uncertainties if they would get it right. Correct.
Very true.
So, which is why I think it's important for people like me, not just to sort of advise from the sidelines, but also get into the gemba, boots on ground, roll up your sleeves, work with the team, their stakeholders, their customers, their partners, their network, right? And to try and solve those things. But why? But that's like also creating a dependency.
It does actually in some senses, right?
Correct. What happens when you are not there?
That's right, because that's where I want to come to, right?
That's where the coach part comes in.
Ah,
Right? So it's not just you are only solving or doing things, right? Innovation things for them. You are also showing how to do that. So there's a lot of show and tell involved, right? So you are not giving a lecture or classroom training, but you are actually watching over shoulder, almost breathing on the neck of those team members and ensuring that they get it right.
that's an interesting thing.
So you mentioned a few other things like
AI
storytelling.
enthusiast, storyteller.
Yeah, storytellers. So I mean, everything else I think just converges
It
into
converges.
being a
Okay.
player coach, right? I mean, storyteller in me ensures that the dependency factor is removed, right? The insights that gets created from this engagement, for example, are retold few months down the line in the room without me being there. And that's the success.
And that's yours.
That's first the team's success. And yes, if there is any credit to be given or taken, yeah, I'm there, right? So yeah, storytelling goes there. AI enthusiast, that's also interesting. That's how I mean that's the element in me that makes sure that we don't end up building yesterday's solution.
Yeah, that's it. That's really. I think you spoke about the Jugaad. I think we understood the fix problem there. Uh, but what now we are really seeing is the connection. I'm really seeing the connection of why you are able to do that. It's the storyteller in you, which is allowing you, if I may kind of put it that way, to make sure that the player coach is always active. It doesn't basically kind of loosen out, either the team is failing or there is some challenge there, but the team also knows that there is a coach which is definitely going to guide us through, right, lead us out of this. You win, you lose, that's a game, that's something, not the place there. But actually the whole point of being a player coach is be with the player, for the player, and the player for you. I think
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
it's like a seamless transition between these two roles, right? And
strong synergy is what I see this.
yeah, strong synergies. And if you look at it by design, the role is designed in a manner to become obsolete within that organization. So
On day one.
from day one, that's the objective, right? So year one, I'm the player coach. Few things goes on the floor, few things gets rolled out, some success, some failures, but your failures are not bad things, right? As long as you treat it well, you know what to do with that failures, right? So yeah. Year two, if I'm still the player coach, year three, I'm still the player coach, then there was no player coach. Either only coach or player was actually operating. So the success of the player coach is the expiry date of the player coach role in that organization. An external expert like me walks into the organization with an expiry date. That's how it's actually designed.
But if I have to kind of ask you this, yes, there has to be, as you said, an expiry date where you kind of come out of the organization after a certain problem or innovation
After a
challenge
certain
has been
maturity level is
there.
attained. Yeah.
But we know that the environments are changing, markets are changing, dynamics changing, economics very differently been handled now in the country. And a lot of times the same company or the same client would try to pivot, would try to do things differently, right? And possibly they may again require a player coach, right? Then the circumstances would be different. Maybe the kind of projects or the task or the environment would be different. But when it's in pivot, right, something in within the organization, either so there are two questions to it. Let me ask you: either they try to do the way what was expected for them to do, as was they were kind of trained, or they have seen, a player coach like you who have done that, and they somewhere end with a jugaad, right? Second, they kind of then have to come back when they realize, no, I this is not the kind of jugaad which we should do here. It is a very deep innovation strategic work which will have to be taken up again. In this too, right? What is the truth? Maybe in terms of certain, without naming the clients, but or the entire
No, I
industry.
understand that. And a fantastic question, by the way, right? I think it's quite a deep question. Uh, if player coach has an expiry date, and given the fact that the context of business and ecosystem keeps changing almost every day, how that expiry date is ever achieved, right? If in other words, if I translate it that way, right? So you see that, think of multiple layers to that, right? Think of onion, for example, right? Maybe not a stinky one, but an onion that doesn't stink, right? With many layers to peel off, right? So, success of a player coach would be that once the team can handle shoulder pivots, right? That means, that's, one layer peeled off, another just adjacent layer pivot if the team is able to succeed. That's the success of the player coach, because player coach is part of whatever they are bringing on table, right? This dynamism, the being comfortable with uncertainties and ambiguities are a non-negotiable aspect, right? So if the player coach is not able to sort of prepare the team to be comfortable with uncertainties, to comfortable with changes, rapid changes, paced changes, then that's not really a success in true sense, right? But having that said, sometimes pivots are not your shoulder pivots equivalent, right? Pivots are significantly different, right? Sure, you have access to player coach. Even better, some of your internal team members probably have assumed that role of player coach. They probably have become expert enough.
So, Pinaki, I want to just take a different note here. I understand you started your career as a software programmer, right? And then
Coder.
a coder, right? And you moved to engineering, consulting. You worked with Mahindra's, Satyam, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, and you did your corporate consulting career, right? I think the journey started in 1999, and then I think as in 2018, it's where you founded DX and Beyond. So, how a software programmer turned a consultant, turned a player coach. I think this is a huge transition,
It was, yes.
and the way you moved right within your career, and then the belief which I understand you may be carrying forward. That's how DX Beyond Bond. If you could shed some light on how that evolved.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's obviously, it's a long journey. It's almost close to 3 decades now. This journey has been. Uh, sure, started with a software programmer, right? That's fresh out of college job equivalent. And yeah, not to boast, but I think I was pretty decent programmer, right? At least people around me would recognize me as one of the good ones, right? Because you also need to understand that's the time when the outsourcing industry was kind of flourishing, right? And so there were software jobs left, right, and center. All sort of qualities were being recruited because the scale was important, right? Rather than the quality. Um, so in that context, I would say that I would probably one of the better ones when it comes to the programming, right? Software programming, etc. See, programming. I mean, obviously, from the programming days to consulting to player coach, if you see that, what changes fundamentally, right? Your lenses, you keep on adding more lenses, right? So, think of stuff like, when you were a software engineer, as a programmer, which I was back in 99, my lens was pretty simple: technology.
Something to develop.
Correct. I am told what to be done and I need to develop that. Correct. The fastest way possible with as much good quality as possible, right? Etc. Etc. So one thing that I learned that helped me throughout my career later on is the discipline aspect. Right? So as a programmer, you are extremely disciplined. I'm talking about the days, those days of programming when we didn't have vibe coding.
Totally agree.
A semicolon got missed, would probably take like 2 night outs at office. Correct? Linked list used to be nightmares, right?
Parenthesis being kind of
I mean,
always calling you
correct,
out.
exactly. And then no amount of prayer would solve that. Correct.
Yes.
So would be spending nights at office, right? In our office, there will be like beds. Actually, beds will be the I mean the mattresses, right? But I don't remember, spending 2-3 continuous days and nights at office. There was a single time where I had to go back to the mattress. That's the commitment. That's the perseverance. That's the, sort of discipline that I think if I would not be in the programming regime, probably I would not be, as strong on that discipline aspect as I am today, right? So that's a fabulous world, right? But then it's not all. You only have one lens, right? To grow, then you need to have so many other lenses. In that business also, there are things like processes, for example. So if you only understand tech and not the process, then it's not that it's too bad. I see still there are like dons of industry who still stick to the tech part, etc. But
Missing out a lot.
yeah, it also depends on from a career perspective, what is your ambition, what do you want to be, right? Yeah, so from that perspective primarily, right? So sometimes it's like because of the job, because of the role that I had, and sometimes, but more often than not, it's actually moments. There are a series of moments that happen beyond the job,
Oh,
and those moments sort of push you into a ocean, forget about lake or swimming pool, without asking whether you know swimming at all or not, right? It's like comes like unannounced, and you are suddenly pushed. You jump and then try to figure out, correct? So those are those defining moments. And if you look at my timeline in terms of years, etc., you'll realize that was the I started in the industry when it was still sort of the defining period of the outsourcing industry, right? So there's a lot of things were still dynamic, things were getting shaped, right? So I was good at techie, so about 1.5 years, I think about a year into the job, and then I was suddenly sent on site. Okay, so there was a small customer we were catering to. We were building a internet application, right, web application for them, for that customer, and I was good at programming. I did good part of the development work myself, but there was a big team. There was a massive team. I think what prompted my manager to send me on site was that I found bugs in others' programs.
okay.
I don't know if it's a very good thing to do in today's context of the today's woke generation, but yeah, I did what I did, right? So that kind of prompted me, and I landed there, right? I landed there without knowing what I was getting into, right? Because the programmers were like the kitchen of the restaurant, right? That's the back office, right? I mean, all the things like, inviting the guests to the restaurant, setting the restaurants, taking orders are all being done by other people with other skill sets. You are away from the customer inside the kitchen. As a programmer, you are away from the customer, right? So you don't have any knowledge of anything about customer, correct? I thought, well, it's just the kitchen has moved. It was here in India. Now it's out there. So I went there. And it was going on well. In fact, I was pretty much in the kitchen, right? To take that analogy to the literal sense, will be, my one of my job was not only handling the coding kitchen, but also the kitchen at night at the residence where we'll be living, right? So I was happy juggling between two kitchens, right? Between my,
Your work and this.
I think Visual Basic, Active Server Pages, VBASP programming
Those
at
were
one
ASP
side.
days. Yes.
Correct, ASP days, VBASP programming at one end, and the other end, making like a dal rice, omelette,
That's right.
khichdi, etc. Right?
Yes.
So, and I was happy doing that. Due to some visa issues, first my project manager had to come back to India. Within weeks, my module leader, who was there, suddenly came back to India. Some issues, right? And I was practically alone. So now you see, I'm no more, although I'm sitting in the kitchen, in the server room, quite often, but I'm the only one if anyone wants to get into the restaurant
You are the one who would be the gate.
to that customer. Correct? So the customer only sees me. And what happens is that it was, I think, the Thanksgiving weekend, right? And no, it was the Christmas weekend, even worst, right? So Christmas weekend. And one delivery was supposed to come from offshore. Offshore will send the delivery and I will then implement it on the server, etc. That was the deal. Offshore didn't send anything. Okay, one day gone. Next day is Saturday. I still went back to office because I had to. Customer said, what happened?
Yes.
My rollout, my go live. And then customer is sitting, CEO, the CTO is sitting in front of me. On the other side of the table, it's me. I need to understand my position. I am the junior programmer. Above me, there is a module lead. Then there is a team lead. Then there is a project lead. Then there is a project manager. And there are, my relationship or whatever, right? None of these things are there. Suddenly the entire hierarchy kind of crashed. I'm sitting in front of customer and I need to explain why it didn't go live. I had choice. Should I make stories? During those days, technical limitation was a very usable story. Because most of these guys would come from non-technology background, the customers, right? And then, a lot of times, technical limitation was the reason why this could not be done, was the story that would be pushed. I had another choice, to be honest, and reason. I also don't know why, the offshore failed to send the delivery. I understand there's a lot of, holidays at that time, etc., etc. Probably things were not done or not tested, whatever it is. So I choose the second one, right? Okay. And I started reasoning with that. Did I get any jitters? No, no question. Because frankly speaking, a CEO or a CTO didn't mean anything to me at that time. I had no idea of customer side.
Right.
The way I'm speaking with you, I'll be speaking with them. I mean, as we say, right, a kid is born with no fear.
Right.
As you grow older, you gather more fear. And that happens. I was the kid in the block.
So I think when I think such situations you've been put quite often. I think.
And that kept on happening. That one day taught me about customer relationships that I don't think any university could teach me.
Yes, I totally agree. I think this is where when you alone fight your battle, right? When you alone have to serve the customer, plus you have to face the customer.
Face the customer. Yes.
Right? Maintain the relationship, right? Try to be
Douse the fire.
Douse the fire. Yeah. Thank you for
So we are
that. Douse the fire.
firefighters.
It's firefighters.
Correct. So once you are in this industry, you need to understand that most of us are firefighters.
Firefighters. Wow.
Now, it's your choice. You want to take those experiences of being into those infinite, firefighting to elevate your experience, or you keep cribbing about it.
Right.
I choose the first one, right? And then there's so many such moments, right? When I was in Satyam, January 2009, I believe, suddenly the organization came crashing down.
It is, yeah, the biggest
Satyam fraud, right?
biggest fraud there. Yes.
Correct. Ironically, I was then a little bit senior,
Okay.
correct? So I was uh, the competency leader at that time, right? And what was that competency that I was selling? Project management and governance. Imagine an organization
Falling down.
falling down because of governance at the top.
Governance at the top. And you're kind of the guy.
And I'm kind of trying to sell that thing, right? But so that day, suddenly in the middle of the night, it happened in the morning. I was working from home that day, and I saw that news on the TV. Started calling, because all my other colleagues, my leaders, right, etc. They were at office, so obviously in the office they're not able to see the live news, right? So I called them, etc. And then we all came into a proper conference call. Nobody had any clue. See, it happened at an apex level,
At the very top.
right at the very top. So nobody below that had much clue. So at our level, we were clueless. But at the same time, I had, a lot of team members, right? And my team members who were working at least in 4 different parts of the world on those customer projects. Some of them are with their families. Some are expecting to be first-time parent. Some had a dental appointment fixed. Nobody knows if the medical insurance will be renewed.
I think that's a very scariest phase of, I think, somebody being part of such an organization which kind of came crashing down, because I think everybody has a promise to either their families or their friends or their, better half, something.
So, well, I am not sure whether I'm gonna get my next salary. I need to make sure that these guys remain calm, because they have also an added responsibility of not skipping their deliveries.
This is where
Again, something that taught me about people, I don't think no book could teach me.
definitely, I think the one which Satyam piece taught you, I think it's people and managing people and connecting with them. I think
I kept learning all the way, right? So I kept looking at my leaders. Fortunately, they were all great people, right? And I kept learning them. At the beginning, I just started mimicking them. Just what they're doing. They're telling us, hold on to that, right? So I started copying that, right? Started telling me. And then, few days, few weeks into that, then you get into the groove, and then you start innovate in your ways.
your ways, right? That's where you kick in your Jugaad, kick in something which you'll think that's a Jugaad, but actually that's the innovation which has started for you.
Could be. At this time, see, when you were at risk, right? And if you are doing the Jugaad thing, I think you are doing the smartest thing. You are at risk of survival, and you are thinking, no, I need to go the whole spectrum of innovation. That's probably the stupidest thing to do. So innovation has a context. Innovation has an applicability, right? So that's why Jugaad is great.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think I'm getting where the journey of player coach is been kind
So
of.
you get to see probably how it happens.
Yes. And finally, when post Tech Mahindra is where you kind of
The
decided.
player coach, the terminology I coined, yes, of course, after Tech Mahindra, right? So during the last few years at Tech Mahindra, we were into digital, transformation and innovation, consulting. So that's what we were doing. So I was fortunate to have, sort of be in some of those very interesting customer discussions and brainstorming, etc. To try and see, to basically learn that what was happening, what people were thinking, what some of the leading organizations are, are thinking in terms of their long-term change, right? So So while those things were good, one interesting thing was there. See, at the same time, I was also working on something called FOTB, or the future of the business, for some of those industry verticals, right? So you will see a reflection where today's future back strategy comes from, right? So I was trying to sort of imagine how some of the industries would look like in the wake of digital transformation, etc. A few years down the line, right? Healthcare, manufacturing, automotive, pretty much across industries, right? I have always been pretty much agnostic to cross industry, which I think is more of a strength than a weakness, because then I get to bring in
You could visualize
the
this.
various elements and spot risks rather than having a
So
like a
that's a good
horse's
thinker,
plan.
actually.
Right, yeah. So the role that I play, I think it's more of an advantage than the other way around, right? So when I was doing those things, right, so I realized, I got into that, it got into my nerve that, I need to thrash it out. I need to be a little bit of futuristic in some sense, and try and imagine that, how the future should look like, or would look like, most likely, right?
But this thought coming into you that you need to look at the future and how would it look like, I think not everyone really gets that thought. That is
It's an individual interest, I think.
interest, but then I think uh, from my lens, my viewpoint is that uh, people who really believe that there is a change possible and the future is going to bring that change, and you want to really see the future that way. Typically, I think if you see our parents, you say, if you want to build a future, you work for it. Either you work from here till there or from there till here.
Correct.
Now, that's your lens. You want to work from there till here. If that's your lens, if you want to, let's say, reach a goal there, something somewhere, and you're working backwards, future and backwards, I think that's the lens. That's something which is very core and deep in a person. And I think always a coach, a mentor, or somebody who is beyond leadership, right? Who leads the leaders. Let me kind of, I've been talking to a lot of mentors across and coaches across, right? And they say the people who are ready to lead the leaders is having that kind of mindset or that kind of thinking ability.
Sure.
So I think I see that now why player coach exists.
That's why player coach exists, right?
And why player coach is so active, right? The kind of, maybe you call it as a framework or what, but I think that's innovation thinking.
I think that's the future of innovation advisory, to be very honest. Right? Uh, if you are within that organization, you will not probably call yourself a player coach, because going forward, that should be part of the hygiene. That should be the only way for you, right? So you will not call it like a separate badge of honor equivalent that I'm a player coach. That should be the hygiene.
I think the day when you achieve this, or when I think you see your industry achieving this particular hygiene, I think you really have conquered that space, because
I think at least I could help in some
help
manner,
somewhere,
yeah.
right? Pinaki, you have coined the term or the phrase, right? Innovation theater. I think what it says is, uh, well, rather than me to say it, I would love what innovation theater is, and in the context of, is it a practice, or if it is a framework.
First of all, it's not me who coined the term innovation theater. All right. I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's Steve Banks back in 2018, 2019, some time frame. So, yeah, I would not be, so accurate about that. But yeah, I mean, at least it's not me, right? But yeah, I use that almost as if I did it, right? So much sort of owned that, phrase, innovation theater. What it really means, right? So, I mean, we all have seen some innovation programs at some point in our lives, and, while working in a corporate, right? And what I'm saying is primarily in the context of a corporate setup, right? I'm not talking about the social innovation, for example, right, etc. So in a corporate setup, you will see that it's a very familiar scene, right? There will be a lot of funfair. There's a lot of people who would gather. Uh, They would do something, run around the places. There will be a lot of sticky notes and sharpies and sketch pens and whatnot. There will be a lot of standees. They will do so many stuff. There will be brainstorming. The crown jewel of that entire process is ideation, which is like I think a Silicon Valley term for brainstorming, right? So, ideation, brainstorming, etc. That hundreds of ideas will come up, and then there will be some will go to the next level. They will do some prototyping. These days I think nobody does POP or prototype on paper, but you have all the digital tools and you will build something.
Right.
And then some of the teams will be announced as the winners as well, right? Think of most of the corporate annual hackathons that happens, right? So there will be, these days a lot of hackathons are also happening in all the engineering colleges as well. Overnight, students, stay up late and they just, solve something. And the feeling is no less than, I invented fire. Like
It's
this.
like that. Yes. Yes.
I think Tom Hanks, right? I
I
invented
think Tom Hanks. Anyways.
that movie, right?
Yes.
So I invented fire kind of stuff, right? So that's the feeling. While nothing,
Tom Hanks, Castaway.
Castaway, Tom Hanks, right? Yes, that's the one. So that's the feeling, right? It's a very proud moment. It's a very proud moment of feeling that you have achieved something. But the thing is that keeps on happening every year in the organization.
It's
Right.
repetition. Oh, it's cycling.
Nobody's sure exactly what got achieved. How many of those ideas actually got shipped? That means built and shipped. What value any of it, if shipped at the first place, what value it delivered back? Nobody knew the solutions that were conceptualized at this stage, whether those were at all needed at the first place. Where was the need? You're not an academic institution.
Right.
Right? You're a corporate, for-profit organization. Every dollar counts, every rupee counts. Where was the need? What was your validation that this is the problem that you should be solving?
It's the why which we need to ask.
We only got enthusiastic about what and how.
Right.
Why, who, when, where. Completely out, right? So I normally try to explain innovation theater to someone who is not, who still doesn't get it. Is like, have you ever been to a Ram Leela?
Ram Leela, yes.
Maybe during your
During
younger
my
days
younger
or
days, yeah,
whatever,
childhood,
right?
yes,
Childhood,
yes,
Ram
yes,
Leela.
Yes.
What happens in a Ram Leela?
I think we see actors, we see this play, right? We enjoy it. I think
So much energy
energy.
everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
On stage, off stage,
Off stage, everywhere.
in the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge
Crazy.
amount of energy.
Almost.
But think about it. It's an act. It's an act. First of all, you know all the acts, all the scenes already. You know how it starts. You know how it ends. You know the actors. You know the dialogues, each and every one of it. You know what happens during. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Right? You know what happens afterwards. Right? Empty chairs. A lot of garbage here and there. All the costumes are packed into the trunk, only to be used for the next year. But in a Ram Leela, do you ever care to sort of stand back and ask, what am I doing here? Why am I even doing it? Apart from the religious aspects, etc., let's keep those things outside. What have I achieved? Right? So most of those innovation theaters are like a corporate Ram Leela. Right? You know what's going to happen. You know that there will be hundreds of ideas coming from all part of the organization. You know that teams will team up. You know the actors. Every year after year after year, the team composition hardly changes. Unless until the person has left the organization or a new person has joined the organization. Right? So you know every act of it. You know there will be pizzas. You know there will be, maybe even after hour beers.
Yeah.
Right? So what it is if it is not a corporate Ramlila? Right? So innovation theater is not a framework. Innovation theater is not a practice. I mean, it's being practiced, but we talk about practice in a superlative form, right? So practice that has to be adopted. It is not something to be adopted. But having that said, if innovation theater all bad?
I think it's not.
It's not. Don't underestimate the energy that it generates.
Yeah, because
Don't underestimate the self-participation,
oh yes,
the motivation factor, the
Yes,
self-participation
yes,
factor
yes,
that
yes.
works behind, that you don't see, that made the innovation or hackathon and innovation theater or the annual hackathon successful, right? It's like volunteered, right? Yes, obviously, I come across a lot of organization where that struggle with employee engagement, etc. So even an annual hackathon sort of is not good enough to generate the kind of momentum that is needed, right? And those are the organizations then to rethink obviously when they look at their annual hackathons, right? Because they have a far bigger problem, the employee engagement, far bigger problem
that's a different
to solve, right?
bigger problem to solve. Yes,
Correct, bigger problem to solve. But quite often than not, it actually creates that huge amount of excitement. And that excitement is a valuable currency for any organization. Only if they know how to monetize those currencies. Right? So, innovation theater and an innovation program, the difference is only that.
correct. I think thank you for sharing this because this brings clarity to table. I I think everyone would definitely resonate with this, but the point is how do you monetize or how do you
How do you
make
monetize?
value over that is something you need to capitalize on that.
Correct.
That's where
You cannot let that momentum go. See, any annual hackathon programs or annual or not, any hackathon program, any this kind of corporate, even if you call it innovation theater, is great initiation program.
it's a really a good start.
You landed the program. But again, the same mentality that promotes Jugaad keeps us happy about it.
Keeps you happy about it. Oh,
Or probably
right.
the leadership use the innovation program or the innovation hackathon not really to innovate, but as an employee engagement lever. Which if they did, then it's a strategic lever.
It's a strategic lever. Yes. Agreed.
Because then you are not really, worrying about, what gets shipped.
Yeah, it's not the outcome. It's
Correct.
basically very
Although
different.
I would argue these days, if you're trying to solve, engagement problem, and I'm not sure if you're gonna touch upon on the HR side as well. But then if you are trying to solve, maybe we can park it for the later on. Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'll park it for the HR segment. But yeah, I mean, if you have used it from a strategic perspective, right, then it's a success. But then you should also think that what are the potentially good things you could achieve once you have generated that momentum.
I think that's a very deep lens. And thank you for sharing that, Pinaki, because the innovation theater and the innovation hackathon and the clarity between these two, it's really what you put onto the table. And one thing key takeaway is how do you monetize on it?
How do you monetize that currency? And what's your currency? That momentum that you create. That's a currency, don't forget it.
Yes. Wow, interesting. This is slight shift. I think I wanted to talk to you about one instance where you had worked with one of the CHROs, and who had said that we upskilled 8,000 employees, deployed 2 AI tools, and engagement moved by only 2 points.
Correct.
I did not understand why is that happening? Like, what's that? You would tell the CRO to do something very different.
So basically, what happens is that it really depends on what were you actually expecting when you went ahead rolling out those learning programs, uh, etc., right? You rolled out those AI tools and things like that, right? What is the problem that you are trying to solve, right? If it is the employee engagement issue that you are trying to solve, right, then as a CHRO, you should be aware that learning is not the only way to solve that problem, right? Correct. And I would argue that more than learning, probably you need to look at what you are doing to offer these people, these 8,000 people or whatever, in terms of problems worth solving, where they get to feel like they matter. They get to feel like they're heard. They get to feel like they have the permission to take a decision. Who is at the receiving side of employee engagement issue? The employees. They they feel burnt out. They feel not paid well. By the way, is not the primary reason, right? I mean, it boils down to a point where that feels starts feeling
Starts
like the most
feeling like the
contentious.
most one,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
But there are other aspects that actually feeds to that.
Actually, now I'm kind of relating to this. I did in my employee days. I think I still felt this. I think what you said. I think I'm getting that right. It's not
So
always.
what I'm saying these days is that and we have done work on that aspect, right, as well. See, the employees feel much valued, right? Again, the burnout, for example, is a very funny thing, right? So my burnout is not same as your burnout. There's no universal definition of what is burnout, right? Some industry stalwart, trying to say that, to work like 60, 50, 60 hours a week to whatever. We may keep on debating on those aspects, but burnout is a particular individual aspect, individual thing, right? And that, so it's a feeling, right? When you are not able to balance your, various sort of responsibilities in life, right? So from that perspective, if you really think that, once an employee gets to see that, yes, I'm valued here. Primarily, if you look at the mid to senior, the mid management layer, etc. From that onwards, there are these aspirations that starts getting built as well, right? So, and then to cater to that, and CNB revision is not the only way to cater to that, right? Because that's a with an expiry date. 3 months, 6 months down the line, it will come up again.
Again, same will again come up.
The same will again come up, right? So, instead, if you can actually empathize with them, right? Put them in the driver's seat to solve their own problems. As HR, I will not be trying to solve the employee engagement problem. I will ask my employees to solve that problem. And that's exactly what we did. Shift the lens, flip it.
And I think that's what the coach does. In case of the sports, right? That's where the coach does, basically. Actually, for a player, I think if you see soccer or if you see something specifically in these games, a high touch point game like soccer or a cricket, something, that's what the coach does for that player, basically.
And since we're also playing, those burn points, those frictions, those unhappy moments, right? So the key is empathy here, and then you flip the lens, and then you no amount of AI tools or no amount of these days a lot of organizations are rolling out digital learning experience platforms, right? And but would that really solve this issue, right? What we have seen is that when we could flip that lens, right, and we actually live the life of those employees, right? If the organization is working in shift, would be spending in those night shift, right? And we would be empathizing with people when they are l- least corporate way, right? So catch them in the vending machine, catch them in the parking when they're sort of probably lighting up cigarettes, right? Catch them in the canteen, cafeteria, right? Stuff like that.
Just want to hold you there, because when we want a CHRO to empathize, right? I think CHRO itself needs to understand that he needs to be a player coach.
Absolutely, bang on.
Then he could start doing these kinds of activities, right? Because I think till the time you do not understand that beyond the seat or your role which you are at, right? If the employee has to solve its own problem, right? You will have to become a player coach.
Correct. So to improve that engagement, that insight is crucial, and you will often be surprised to see the insight how different it is than what you have assumed the insights are. In one engagement, in the very first meeting, the CEO said that the CHRO said that how it will work. Everybody will, when you ask someone what they want, then everybody will say that I want 2x salary, right?
Yeah.
But Ron, I can tell you, in my experience of doing multiple engagements in that aspect, not a single engagement has happened where that money came out as not even top three, but even top five priority. You just need to know how to reach to them, how to touch them, where they feel that yes, you could empathize with them. What is empathy really? It's your ability to. I mean, a lot of people think that okay, empathy is just I'm able to understand you,
That's what commonly people think.
right? But I'll say it doesn't end there because you have not yet achieved the objective of empathy. You need to demonstrate as well that you understood the other person.
And you got this bang on. The objectivity towards empathy. What's the objective?
Correct. So if I stop midway, everything else I do afterwards makes no sense.
Nothing's going to move. Nothing is going to. It's
So
still
there are so many times this has happened that there was a stalling situation somewhere in the middle of the engagement, right? There is no way to move, right? There are conflicting views coming up in terms of what needs to be done between different employee cohorts, right?
okay.
But the fact that you are able to empathize with them, which means more than you know what they want, they know that you know what they want. Correct? And that's where the coach plus player comes in, right? So once that relationship is kind of established, then the kind of insights that start, start coming in, you'll be surprised. And you don't need to do anything special, any particular. The conflict will resolve itself.
I think thank you, I think, for sharing this. I think this is truly highly relatable to not just a CHRO, but anybody who wants to kind of.
And CHRO is only an example, right? And I know a lot of CHRO, a lot of HR leaders who are in my connection. I know a lot of people are they probably are doing it, right? They are are at least attempting it, right? Because the value creation that happens through these kind of engagement is non-linear, right? So there is one engagement where we could reduce this helped improving the engagement by 200%. You can't expect any linear method to do that.
I absolutely. I think it doesn't work that way. I think it has to be a non-linear
It
method.
doesn't work that way, right? And
Yes.
while attrition is a combinatory effect of so many things that happens in the organization, so after a year, the annualized attrition went down by more than 21%, right? Now that's the kind of benefit that probably benefit horizon you could look at, right? When you are playing it right.
Yeah, I think this has given me a very different outlook as to now what you said this, because as you deal with people or in the problems which this CHRO or any such thing we will have, uh, it is always coming to back of my mind, right? Constantly, that the more objectively the problem is driven, and the first fact that it has to be a player coach approach, player plus coach approach, I think you would be able to explore, which you had a very different set of uh, a lens or a method. A player coach technique kind of changes that. It's a paradigm shift for not just the CHRO or somebody in that place of the role, but even for your, let's say, the employees, if that was the case, right? That kind of gives the value creation for the stakeholders.
Correct. And you briefly touched upon on it. I think the key is problem first.
Problem first, yes.
So when you are rolling out a digital learning experience platform, when you are rolling out AI solutions, etc., if you're not, see, I'm not against any of those platforms or tools or technology, as long as you precisely know what problem you're trying to solve, what matters most, right? Not just what good looks like.
Pinaki, you wrote a post called "Design Thinking is Dead," and you said a client told you that first.
That's a true story.
And I'm surprised. Like, is design thinking dead?
Well, I mean, there is a long and short answer, right? But before we get to that, either version of that, I think, so that was a true story, right? So I was sort of canvassing, was trying to get a meeting with some of the leaders within that organization. And then I get this meeting, come all prepared. Even before I could start, the person tells me that design thinking is dead. And, this was very early, towards around 2018, 2019 timeframe back then. Yeah, right. So, and my pitch was primarily design thinking. So I was kind of clueless what I would do, right? But yeah, I mean, to be fair enough, I think the people who believe design thinking is dead has their reasons, right? I mean, I will not outrightly claim that they're wrong.
Okay.
Okay. And that is primarily, and this is again my own take, own belief, is that I think that is primarily because the manifestation of design thinking, the way it has turned up, right, from a very powerful thinking tool and problem solving tool to almost become a project itself, right? So if you treat design thinking, as a project where deliverable is the workshop, design thinking is dead for you.
And that would be the end of it.
That would be end of it. Then I would even question why you are doing design thinking.
And that's what the next thing would come up.
Correct. So it's not to create a like a manifest out of it, right? We need to understand that it's a design-led method. It's a creative process, right? It's non-sequential, non-linear process. There's a lot of back and forth, and everything is allowed. It's not a method that is guarded by hard rails, right? The guardrails are very fluid,
Right.
and you have complete authority to change those the way you want, right? So, like the Intel Inside certified, there is nothing like design thinking inside a solution, right? So you cannot treat it like a well-defined process. Yes, it's well-defined. Don't get me wrong on that aspect, right? So yeah, it's well-defined, but you don't treat it like how you would actually treat any other well-defined process where there is a defined input, the process does certain things, and then there is a defined repeatable output. That's the success of that process, right? Design thinking is not,
It has to be fluid.
right? It has to be fluid. It has to work the way it should and must work for you. Most importantly, it has the context of applicability. You can't try and solve all problems under the sun using design thinking.
Agree. It wouldn't. Not all problems would require design thinking.
Correct. So, for example, you have like known, 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 unknown, unknown, unknown. You are familiar with these three territories, right? Design thinking works better or works at all only if there are fair amount of unknowns involved. Otherwise, you are simply over engineering. You are doing more harm than good to the problem solving. You are only procrastinating your value point, value creation
That's
point.
always been that case.
Correct?
And as we have seen always lately, everybody does that.
So if you have been through those things and you have made design thinking almost like a religious fixture, right?
Yes.
For lack of a better phrase,
I get that.
right? Then design thinking is dead for you.
Like,
But if you are true to the concept, if you think that it's a thinking tool, it's a problem solving ways to do, how you solve problems, crucial problems. If you are dealing with a wicked problem, not all problems are wicked problems, right? If you're solving wicked problems, if you're solving known unknowns or unknown unknowns,
that's again the biggest.
correct? Then I think design thinking has a lot to offer. It's far from being dead, right? It's primarily, we made it, again, for lack of a better words, a theater out of it. So I come across those design thinking work requests many times, right? Where it's like the cherry on top of the ice cream.
Okay. The ice cream is ready.
They have the ice cream is ready.
They just
Everything
kind
is
of
ready.
Want to have cherry.
Now, someone from somewhere, maybe somewhere in the many GCCs, for example, the global office probably said that design thinking, did you attempt that? No. Okay, let's now do design thinking. In one
Yeah,
engagement,
it's
in
a valid
fact, Rohan,
example.
I'll tell you, in one engagement, I called the entire customer fraternity out there for a particular function. I think it was for the procurement function. I called them to sort of thrash out the frictions that are there in their journeys day to day in life, etc. And the kind of CIO's right hand, right, that comes to me with few printouts, and then he says, "Sir, this is in India, obviously. Sir, we already solved it." And I spent 2 hours using PowerPoint. I have created all the screens for the solutions. And I was like, I thought we are today here to discover the problem.
Yes.
You said you already know the problem and you solved that. So what should I do? Why am I even here? Shall we go back to those, the room full of customers who are sitting, who are at the problem space, right? And that's, I very fondly and quite often use this term, that make them part of the solution as well, and not just part of the problem.
Right. I think you have written about that.
Correct. So they are going through, they're living through those problems, and don't imagine that they don't know how to solve it. They're not just empowered enough, enabled enough, equipped enough, right? They can. So, should we go back to them and start validating these problems? Then, no, sir, we'll not do that. Then, you steer the discussion in a manner so that their solution comes aligned to what I have already captured in the PowerPoint. So, if this is your definition of design thinking, then I'm sorry, my dear friend, it is dead. It is long, long dead.
It's not
It's
there.
rotten even.
Yeah, it's not there. I think that's not what it is, right? It's not there. I think you've been trying to live the fact that the icing on the cherry. I think forget the cherry itself.
In today's context, the way the huge amount of dynamism that got added to the business, right, in the advent of AI and etc., where everything is changing, right? If you only think of design thinking like in a bracket, you will probably see only half of the things, right? So you need to combine design, depending on the problem that you are trying to solve, obviously. But then you need to combine design thinking with system thinking, right? Without without doing that, you are not really doing the justice. You are only capturing a problem that is half understood, right? So think of design thinking and system thinking. Design thinking in terms of zoom in, system thinking in terms of zoom out, right? So unless and until you are able to zoom in and zoom out and fix your lens that, okay, this is my area of control, I cannot zoom out beyond this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there has to
Because
be.
beyond that, it's someone else's problem
Yes.
that
Yes.
I don't have any
not.
control
Yes.
over. So that's how you need to use design thinking to solve some of the most complex problems.
But that has always been a point, where I think when we discussed about, again, coming back to the mechanics of player coach, right? Or the kind of problems and stories which we saw, right? Uh, which really brings back to the point that have you known the first objective of what are you getting into, right? But then when we think of that, right, and this case where you mentioned about that, the person asking you to fit, right, maybe trying to repeat the better word is align,
That's the
and
cherry on top of ice cream.
align the cherry to look, maybe polish it or something like that, or maybe just put it there. It solves the problem. Nobody eats the cherry on the cake. It's always kept aside, right? That's what's happening. I think the cherry will be kept aside. The cake is cut, but the cake is still a cake. So actually, for him, the customer where you came into, right, about looking at what is the right problem, or looking at, let's see if the problem exists, right, in the before fact, right. I think they have decided that this is the problem. But then you also mentioned somewhere, right, while we do this, there is this one point when we said, ki, as a player coach, or uh, I should not repeatedly be doing some stuff, either because either I can be a player or sometimes I can coach, then that's really not the case. That becomes a failure at certain point in time, because it doesn't give out the benefits to the maybe the
Yeah, I mean,
client.
the enablement of the
Is
teams are equally
important,
important,
right?
not
But
just solving the problem.
solving problem. But then there's this term which you kind of talked about is innovation OS,
Yeah, innovation operating system, yes.
innovation operating system, right? So how does that live?
Again, a great question, right? It's fairly new concept. I don't know how many keep talking about innovation OS, right? I mean, first of all, let's not confuse between uh, innovation platforms and innovation OS, right? So first,
Let's yeah, I think
let's understand it.
let's look at the focus. We have done a lot of discussions, but then we are now only focusing on innovation OS, and a platform is too different, I think.
Correct. So innovation, we're not talking about innovation platforms here. There are plenty of those platforms, etc. Right? Yeah. So innovation OS is basically a concept where we actually create the business innovation as a serious business capability. It is not a functional skills. It's not a technology skills. It's a business capability. Innovation as a business capability, right? You create that business capability and stitch it into the rhythms of how the organization functions. So it is not an event, it is not a project, not an initiative. It is how you do anything within that organization where obviously innovation is needed, right? So it is pretty BAU stuff. You don't need much of an innovation there. In fact, the more you stick to your SOPs, the better from a efficiency perspective, productivity
That's right,
perspective,
right. That's
etc.,
how.
etc. That was okay till I came in and started giving it a shake, right? So now, if you are living in that side of the world, right, thinking that, okay, I'm BU, back office,
Yeah.
and you are not deliberately disrupting yourself to reimagine using the future back thinking, right, then you are potentially risking the whole organization, right? So what you're saying is that in terms of the innovation OS, right, innovation operating system, Imagine what an operating system does, right? It's a rhythm.
It's right. It builds the rhythm. It functions.
Everything that you do is around it,
Around it. Yes.
using it.
Yes.
It is there, but you don't see it.
Yeah.
You work on various things, various applications. But without the operating system, none of these things will be synced, integrated, right? So innovation should be part of the cadence of an organization. Okay. So that you don't, and this is obviously, you may imagine that that's a utopian state at this stage, right? Because especially if you are someone who is handing over that printout to me, that, sir, this is design thinking, right? So for you to imagine this innovation ways probably would feel like utopian, sound like utopian. But that once you have that capability that you build in, and again, I'm not talking about a skill competency type capability, I'm talking about a serious business capability. Then as an organization, you are very cautious. You are always forward looking. You know how to bring in your outside in perspective. You reduce your dependency on consultants and market research agencies alone to bring those those insights. These days, you are hearing a lot about how Claude would eat up McKinsey or whatever, right? And that kind of stuff, right? I don't know whether that would happen. These kind of threats are not new, or like Gen AI killed consulting business, etc., right? All those things are being discussed, but whether that happens or not, that you and me do not have much control over. So, and your point is as good as my point till the time that it comes, and we are clear that what has happened or not, right? So, keeping those aside, I think there are certain goodness to pick up from, right? Which is definitely, your Claude and ChatGPTs of the world are changing the way the entire consulting business was working. So if, as a customer, you were valuing a consulting business to bring you insights, to think twice now, right? There are possibility for you to build that mechanism as part of your innovation ways within that organization. Thereby, you reduce some of those dependencies, right? Would that replace experience? Perhaps no, not at least right now, right? I don't know how it will, shape up over the next few years.
I think what you truly brought into perspective is that even in these case of technologies, Gen AI, LLMs, or Claude, all these, right? This is and could be part of your innovation OS, the way you structure your innovation OS. Replacing with an experienced person or the expertise which he carries, that's maybe a secondary problem to look at it. How does it well do? But at least when it has to talk about knowledge and kind of giving out the knowledge, right? Because one of the key things is the way you put the cherry on the ice cake, right? At least now it knows beforehand to ask you a question.
Correct.
What kind of cake are you building?
Absolutely, and that is spot on.
So I think,
And once you build that as part of your regular cadence, for example, anything and everything that you do, any decision point that you cross, if you build a cadence around that, then essentially what you have is an innovation ways. Then innovation is not a separate project. Then innovation is not a separate initiative that needs to be funded, and the chief innovation officer would not be struggling to get the funding. And along with that, so it has two aspects, right? So one is this cadence part of it, and then this cadence would fail if you are not enabling people enough. So from the industrial revolution time, as we came to the internet time, digital time, to the AI's time, etc., one thing that we still probably have not solved for good is that innovation still remains the job of the corner office.
that's an unfortunate.
But for most of the legacy business, this is the setup, right? Large business, legacy business, etc. And while you may have set up your own incubator, fancy innovation lab, and stuff like that, but If you are using those most from that quote unquote theater perspective, then it's of no use, right? So, unless and until you are democratizing who can innovate, right? That permission, unless and until you are handling that, there is no way innovation ways will actually work, right? And that's where in to look at that who can innovate, right? Have you seen that movie Ratatouille?
Ratatouille, yes.
Correct. So the mouse, I mean the chef, right? So there is a famous chef in Paris or something, right? So what's his famous quote? That moves the mouse or the rat. Yeah, anybody can cook, right? So similarly, anybody can innovate, provided they're enabled enough, equipped enough, right? So three things you need to look at it, right? So is there decisioning autonomy, for example, right? The ability to say yes or no to any idea, right? The resourcing, the resource allocation, in most organizations, that's a big thing. I mean, all ideations are done, everything strategy deck is ready. Now it's time to get the funding, and the funding process starts only after getting the ideas solidified, not before. So if you are, you know what I'm, yeah, indicating, right? So if this is your process, then you need to think twice. But last and most important, do these guys have permission to fail? Innovation does not equal operation.
We need to build a safety net.
If they don't feel the safety net, then the innovation ways will not work, right? So ways has one side, the cadence part of it, and that's where all your, the governance aspect typically works, and it gets stitched into your functioning of the organization, how the organization works, etc. As I said, it has applicability, what you innovate, what you not, etc., etc. And the other part is really this enablement part, right? So if you are not really democratizing innovation, that's where your skills, methods, tools, but most importantly, the mindset at the first place, right? As I said, deliberately disrupt your BAU. I mean, that's a big risk in any risk officer's register.
Yeah, very true. So when we look at, I think, interestingly put about the innovation OS, which you kind of been saying.
And then just one point on top of that, and then all these things are easy to sort of say and explain, right? But then if you are the one who's entitled or who is given the charge of implementing this, building this OS within the organization, right? All these, lectures and, knowledge bites probably is not good enough, right? So because, see, unless and until today no doubt we're living in a technology world, right? And anything and everything that we do has technology. Technology builds habits, destroys habits, right? We very soon, I fear, we'll forget how to write using pens, right?
I think we already, right? But I think
correct. So it builds habit, like scrolling is a habit created, but probably another habit gets destroyed, etc. Right? So what I'm trying to arrive at is that technology is extremely essential if you want to sort of institutionalize this innovation ways. So don't shy away from those, all those technologies that are there. There are plenty of platforms. I work with one such platform, Itonics. That is where I built all my, templates, tools, methods, frameworks, governance, everything. Right? So you choose, but use a technology, because without technology, nothing will stick. And if you are building an operating system that doesn't stick, you are again doing only theater.
Pinaki, I think I have a very interesting question, but it's not a question. I have this kind of a scenario which I would like to present to you, and we look forward to kind of your insights and takeaways in this scenario. As we've been discussing about innovation theater, design thinking, and innovation OS. But let me give you a scenario, right? if a CXO
It's a hypothetical scenario.
hypothetical
right?
scenario.
Okay.
Let's say if a
Yeah,
CX,
if it's a real one, then I should be extra careful.
no, it's not a real one, but then I would definitely say it's part of a research which happened, and then we kind of stitched it together to see, okay, this seems to be kind of a problem statement
Okay.
there. But let's take it as a hypothetical scenario. So if a CXO comes to you tomorrow, right, and says, we want to use Gen AI uh, to drive the innovation across our 10,000 person organization.
Wow. Okay.
Gen AI to
Yeah.
drive innovation across our
10,000
10,000 person organization.
organization. That's quite
Right.
big. Yeah.
You being who you are, a player coach, right? Where do you tell them to start? And more importantly, what do you tell them to avoid?
Okay. Again, a good question. Um, the first thing that I would do is obviously congratulate this CXO for deciding that they need to go across this 10,000 organization to drive innovation. And on top of it, leveraging generative AI or Gen AI as much as possible, right? I mean, that itself is a I know it's a hypothetical situation, but that itself is a big decision if a CXO first is able to arrive at that decision, right? Because I can imagine the kind of ocean that that individual would have been, sailing through before they're prepared enough to ask me this question: how to go about it, what to do, what not to do, right? Yeah. So that's the first thing first, right? Second thing is, yes, once you are decided, once you uh, you know want to take that route, the very first thing for you to bring is that, so it's basically three things, right? So I'll ask them to bring a solid friction. Do you have a solid friction across your organization? And again, I use the word, the term friction pretty often. It doesn't necessarily always mean a problem. It could be like an opportunity problem as well, right? So bring me a solid friction first. If you have not invested enough to arrive at that solid friction that is validated, then you are kind of shooting in the dark, right? Unless, because you will never be able to create those first set of proof points that will create the pull in your system. In a 10,000 organization, you cannot go the push way. You need to create pull. And if you have not done that, which is basically a validated friction to solve, you are only shooting in the dark, and no one knows when will be, or how soon, or how late will be your first proof points. So it means driving that change will be very, will have a question mark on it at the first place. Again, see, so far we have not even dived into the domain of innovation as such, right? We are only talking about some basic hygiene. Second is that now, you want to innovate, right? Have you solved those three issues that I already mentioned? Decision autonomy, right? The resource allocation aspect, and permission to fail. If you have not, then Gen AI or not, trying to drive innovation practice across 10,000 people organization will only create chaos, more heartbreaks, because they will learn something, but they will not have any opportunity to experiment, or they will probably experiment, but will always be under the fear of getting, being failed, right? They will experiment, they will succeed, but they will not be able to take it forward because they really didn't have the decision autonomy.
I think all these three.
All these things are connected, right? So decision autonomy is important, the resourcing is important, and obviously your, the permission to fail, right? These three things are absolutely crucial. So that's the second part, right? And if you did all these things, then I think you are good enough to get started. Obviously, you need to still decide where you start, how you start, etc., which I'm sure you'll figure out, right? If not, you know how to get help, right? Get help, right? If you don't get help, right? If you don't know, if you're kind of lost, where to start, how to start, etc. But you need to definitely strategize how you get started, right? So once you are done all those things, I think you can get started. Now, what you should not make this entire Gen AI ways of doing innovation an IT project.
Oh.
And I fear most often you will end up doing that.
Yeah.
Don't make it a procurement exercise, rollout exercise. As I said, don't make it an IT project. Because if you do, then you are defeating the very purpose of democratizing innovation across your 10,000 people organization, right? So that's a strict no.
I think, yeah, thanks. Thank you for sharing this. Maybe I think the first thing as an actionable, which is quite direct, have these three sets of pillars, basically.
And
This is
friction.
friction. The first is friction. Do you really have friction in place there? Are you seeing that friction happening? I think the pool is very important there. You spoke about three things: decision autonomy, permission to fail, and very important, resources. I think that's where you start off with thinking about should you proceed about doing this. And I think finally, what not to do. Let's not make it an IT project, because if you've started off, if a CXO started off doing and thinking about this project or innovation within utilizing Gen AI, right? It's a big step, as you said. I think definitely it's a big step. But then, if it becomes just an IT project, I think nevertheless it's better not to do it. It's not
Absolutely, yeah.
not going to help you. It's
Rather,
going to waste
rather
your
should
time.
not do it.
Yeah.
Don't waste time because
Waste time, waste
EBITDA
money.
has an extra T these days.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
tokens,
Yes.
right? So your 10,000 people will start burning those tokens, AI tokens, and
Agreed.
you'll
I
only
think
see the cost going up.
that's something. Thank you. You brought that point of tokens because you'll never know what happens at the end. And you say, "Oh man, everybody's looking at doing something intelligently. People are consuming LLMs like crazy, and we are the AI company." But then rest.
No, that what has happened, and it's coming from actual experience, right? So I speak to a lot of CXOs obviously in this thing, and especially in the GCC context, you will see that there's a lot of organizations they have already invested, invested in this technology, right? And now what they're struggling with is the adoption part of it. So what is the success criteria of Gen AI in many organizations now? How many people are using it? That dashboard is a success criteria, not what you are producing.
Oh,
You understand the
I
difference,
understood. Yeah.
right?
Oh.
So, and one thing probably I would add, I
Which
said
means
that
they have really checked box the IT problem. Okay, IT guild.
it has become an IT problem, and like in any IT solutions, right, that you build on is like a unidirectional manner. That means I am here for the last 20 years. I know what the business needs. I know what is so to speak the quote unquote requirement. Let's go ahead and build it, right? And you never sort of cared to sort of reach out to a Rohan or Pinaki who are your employees perhaps, right? Because you thought what they need, right? But this famous movie was there, right? What Women Want.
Ah,
Nice comedy movie, right? So it's almost like that. Many teams they work like that, and they end up making it an IT project, a unidirectional way of solving things, right? I mean, in Sanskrit we say that's like Devana Jananti, right? What women want, Devana Jananti, Manushya right? So, but then, and as long as it's business context, and we're talking about employees, what they want, what they need, etc. There are ways to know that, right? So, and that's not one directional communication; that's a bi-directional communication. So, once you do those things, then you don't end up making it an IT project. correct? But if you end up making it an IT project, you have already heavily invested in chipsets. You have heavily invested on a cloud or OpenAI, etc. on licenses, and then suddenly your dashboard that you were showing to the board doesn't talk about what you are creating, but how much of the investment you are utilizing, because that's your success criteria now. So
That's
you see that your success criteria has moved,
yeah, and you never knew it,
and
right?
you didn't even realize.
Yeah, I think there's this book called "Who Moved My Cheese."
Who moved my cheese? Right. It's pretty much like
Pretty
that.
much like that.
Who moved my cheese?
Wow, interesting. And thank you for sharing this. I think this is very interesting. This is very core to the aspect, I believe, where CXOs should really understand this and should drive innovation differently. I think the way we talked about. I want to touch about one point where let's little moving to the India story about here. I think lately we are seeing India is being called the GCC capital of the world, right? And GCC means Global Capability Centers. Do you think we are really building genuine innovation capabilities in this center, or are we really building efficiency and a very expensive innovation theater at a global scale?
Okay. Interesting question, right?
You would
So
you could take a breath and decide what to
yeah,
answer.
no, I think I think I can say it in a breath, right? So beyond any doubt, I think India's GCC story is a remarkable story, right? I think last I checked, the GCC Pulse from UI, I think November, December 2025, etc. I think it was around more than I'm not sure about the numbers, but the numbers are going like leaps and bounds. I think 2117 around that amount of GCCs are there, and it employs a huge amount of workforce. I think over the last this year alone, so far there are um, about 300,000 employment that has got added, right? Something like that. So it's a massive story by numbers. You look at pick up any NASCOM report or etc. You will be like a dazzled by the numbers, right? It's mind-boggling. And is this phenomenon only about in India? No, I mean there are other you know so-called low-cost territories, not just India, right? So you look at Southeast Asia, there's the Philippines, Manila, for example, right? Even in the Europe, the near shores of the East European and Irish, Dublin, for example, right, have been there. They have been playing the GCC game. Poland, for example, is another location where the GCC game is at play for quite some time, but nobody could do that, you know, like what India did, right? So it's a remarkable story,
But let's come back to
which is
innovation.
why it is extremely crucial for us to be uh, very cautious about on the innovation aspect, right? So I think the last industry report talks about a huge amount of these GCCs. More than 80% of those, 80 or 85% of those GCCs are adopting Gen AI, right? And more than I think 2/3 of these organizations are running pilots and that kind of stuff, etc. My point is that if you're not solving those hygiene stuff that you already mentioned, right? And by the way, one thing that you mentioned about GCC is from a cost arbitrage, which actually sort of brought them here, right? From that thing to become a value arbitrage, right? Capability arbitrage, innovation arbitrage, ultimately value arbitrage. It's a long journey, right? It's not going to happen overnight, right? But in this whole process, we should not again end up being the back office of global AI innovation, right? So if we are only providing the infrastructures, the data centers, and the skill sets, right, that are needed to sort of keep running the AI restaurant, then bringing the kitchen analogy back once again, it will make up a big kitchen.
Yeah, we are just building kitchens, more and more kitchen.
More and more kitchens, right? So I just hope that this is we really leverage this opportunity, and we start strategizing what I call the innovation arbitrage, right? See, each GCC, if you talk about, and recently I wrote a playbook for GCCs around that as well, right? Soon we'll put it on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But if I can give a preview on that, right? So it's basically, if you look at every GCC, they're sitting on top of 4 currencies that I'm not sure if everybody is monetizing smartly, right? So first of it is Signal as a currency. They own, manage, and have access to the global business.
Yes.
The data that belongs to that gets generated across the global business of whichever organization that they're working for, right? So they are the first one to catch any signal in terms of frictions, in terms of opportunities, than even their HQs. Right? They should be the first one. But again, you need those 3 things: decision autonomy, resourcing, permission to fail, right? And obviously, along with that, you need to build a proper measurement metrics, right? Not how much token you burn, but what you produce. So you need to have different kind of metrics as well. Once you have all those hygiene things in place, then you should be able to sort of start monetizing this signal, right? The signal, if you process and if you start capturing, sort of conceptualizing your value creation based on those signal, that alone becomes enough convincing point to your HQ, right? To start looking at you as a value creation engine, not just an execution engine.
Yeah. We could give them more.
Correct. Because what happens, Rohan, is that when an industry is scaling so fast, right, at times at a speed where I'm not sure if you are capable enough to manage that speed, right? So what happens is that then the headcount scaling typically outruns capability scaling. Because if you are measured against, how many seats you have created, right? Because each seat has a cost arbitrage still. Let's not, sort of ignore cost arbitrage. That's the whole reason why you are in the business.
That's
in the
the
first
business
place,
of
right? If that is not there, all value talks are all for nothing. Right? So every seat that you create over here obviously has a definite cost advantage elsewhere, and that dynamics is so strong, right? So what happens is that the scale at which you increase headcount outpaces the scale at which you build people to be even able to think of capturing a currency like Signal, monetizing a currency like Signal. Signal is not the only currency.
Yeah, I think you said 3 more, I think.
3 more. So second one, Signal is basically kind of insights and, Second is speed. We are one of the most AI usage country out there in the world. There is a technology, there is a platform, there is a tool that is out there today. Tonight we'll start using that as a nation, right? Such is the curiosity. Such is the willingness to learn or adopt, right? To be current.
Right. Yes.
Not to be left out.
Yeah,
right?
I think this generation of ours, I think now
that's a currency.
That's the currency.
That's no less than a currency. That's speed.
That's speed.
Right. So again, that's another value creation engine.
Correct.
That is demonstrate. You can actually demonstrate speed. You can attach dollar value to the speed, and you can create those investment proposals that can self-fund. You don't need separate dollar budgets. The third one is, obviously, we're saying that a talent 2.0. Yeah. So the talent, whatever is that's a functional skill, that's a your technical skill, functional skill, AI skills these days. Most of these things, I think about 2/3 of these organizations are heavily recruiting AI skills, right? While all these things good, but none of these things will work, or none of these things will be helpful in monetizing any of these currencies that I'm talking about if you don't have focus on building entrepreneurship as a talent, right? So develop whatever you want to develop as a skill, but do not undermine entrepreneurship, right? And that's where probably that's the mindset. See, at the end of the day, skills will be adopted by all individuals differently, right? But as an organization, the culture that you sort of establish is that i'm not I'm not an order taking individual, right? I'm here to create certain things. I'll ask questions, but you have already fixed that permission to failure, so all questions are allowed. See, everything is connected, correct? And then the last one is so I talked about what signal, then speed, then talent, and
I think the fourth currency which you were talking about.
yeah. So the fourth currency is the trust, right? See, over all these years, over the last 2 decades, roughly, right? All these GCCs, they have built the trust to build anything from the global entities, right? Today, I mean, the GCCs would not be GCCs if that trust were not built over decades of hard work, and to prove that yes, we can build anything at global scale, right? Now that's a currency that can be monetized to create an innovation arbitrage. If we could build, we could innovate as well, right? So innovation needs a lot of trust from their HQ perspective. Also, innovation needs a lot of trust, right? And I think the elements of trusts are already there. It's just only being looked at it from a build perspective alone, by and large, and not demonstrating, or maybe waiting for some permission to demonstrate the trust building part from an innovation perspective, right? But look at the amount of senior, professionals that they are in the industry now, right? Part of the GCC industry,
Yeah.
right? There is no reason we cannot monetize all these four currencies:
I'm
signal,
sure. I think
speed, talent,
talent
2.0, and
trust.
trust.
We should do that, and that's the India's growth story. So I think interesting piece which you said about the GCCs and the currency which you need to kind of capitalize on. So we have come back to that segment where it's near to end and it's a rapid fire round. I have certain questions. I'll ask you directly, and you could just give an answer quick on that.
Rapid fire.
Yes, it's
Okay,
a
yeah.
rapid fire. So
I mean, I keep telling people innovation is not fast food, but rapid fire is okay.
okay. So let's start. One book, uh, not written by a consultant, that every innovation leader must.
One,
Maybe you guys
no
name one.
use.
No
You
use.
need to read, in today you need to read more than one, right? So again, Hook, I think must read. I think Niral, um, reverse innovation,
Okay.
right?
Interesting. Lot of books names there.
Reverse innovation. Then the history of scientific revolution, because some of those disruptive things that I'm talking about, right? There's deliberate disruptions, etc., is going to be crucial. And one last but not the least, think slow and fast. Thinking slow and fast, something like that. Yeah.
The worst innovation offsite you have ever attended. I think obviously without naming names. And what made it painful?
Apart from the stale samosas. Okay, so apart from the stale samosas, I mean, it was basically, offsite that you, like you mentioned, right? And the organization paid our airfares, hotel stay, everything, which I'm pretty thankful to them for that. Uh, But as the offsite starts, right, it was supposed to be innovation offsite, and all big leaders start with their ops review, right? That kept on happening. Lunchtime crossed without anyone realizing that, and then every time I'm being asked, "Sir, half an hour more," and then you take the stage. And then towards the end of the day, I was given 30 minutes, and I was asked very clearly that do not ask any question that we might have already asked all these leaders without me knowing really what are those questions. So you have some nice fancy presentation. You're a consultant, right? You have some nice fancy presentation, jazzy presentation. You just show them, and that is good enough, sir. Thank you.
Understood. I got. I think the good message for
Ram
everyone.
Lila in a different format.
Different format. So great. Design thinking or system thinking. If you could only teach one to a room of 100 Indian managers, which would you choose?
It's unfortunately not a or question. It's an and question.
Yeah, but then let's okay, it's an antique.
It's an and. There is no other way. You'll have to figure it out. Figure it a way. How you do that. But
Both of it. What is the one thing you wish more Indian founders knew before they started trying to innovate?
terrific question. How to innovate? As a nation, as I already told you, right? It's not that we innovate, but very little we forget about worshipping, but we value how the process of innovation as much as what we innovate. I understand that's the shiny object. That's see, feel, touch. But imagine that without focusing on the how, you would probably only end up, building me too. If your innovation, if your ambition as a nation is to be global leader in innovation, right, and not the first one in replication, right, then you need to start seriously looking at how you innovate. That is the discussion that needs to start taking center stage as much as you decide or spend on deciding what you would innovate. Right.
How? Yeah. I think thank you for this wisdom. I think a lot of founders would definitely need this to understand what ke pehle how aata hai. I think figure out the how, right? What anyways will follow it. But Pinaki, thank you. I think if there's someone in India who is genuinely understanding or understands the difference between talking about innovation and actually making it happen, I think it's you.
Thank you for that.
It's been great to hear you. It's been wonderful to have you in our podcast, where the kind of thoughts which you said, right, about design thinking, about the innovation and how to innovate, right, and the questions which are very critical enough, not just for the organizations but even for founders. I hope, I think we have touch based upon lot many aspects there, but try to simplify, and thank you for simplifying it much better and giving it clarity. I truly know that this is a very deep subject. It's very vast, and we may not do justice here in this amount of time here. But really, thank you, Pinaki, to do this for us.
Thank you, Rohan. I think first of all, it was a fantastic experience. The free flow of discussions that happens. I think that was the like the key here, right? And you are right. Many things that you talked today itself is a subject to spend hours on behind that, right? So that's there. And lastly, yeah, I think so WMH, right? We make heroes. So although you don't see that, but I'm gonna walk out with the red capes behind me, flying
Thank you.
around, etc. Right?
Like you are a hero. That's why we love to
At least I'll feel
feel.
I'm
Thank
the
you.
hero working out of the studio. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. If this episode inspired you, do share it with someone who should hear this. Do like, share, and follow our channel for more heroes like this.